And now we consider Mars for a Leo ascendant. Mars is the planet that rules over the sense of dharma and purpose for Leo. And that's because Mars rules the 4th house from Leo, as well as the 9th house from Leo. This also tends to make Mars what most people consider to be a royal yoga creator on its own. And that's because it rules the 9th house, a trinal house, and the 4th house, which is an angular house. So when we think of Mars, we're going to find that oftentimes a Leo is going to find their sense of duty through Mars, the placement of Mars, where Mars is situated within the chart. They're going to find that wherever Mars is situated in the chart by house position, generally that's where they're going to feel that they're able to be most effective in their dharma and their activity in the world. And you can refer back to the videos on particular houses to consider, well, if Mars is in the 4th house, what is the 4th house about? How might a Leo ascendant find their sense of purpose and activity, power, through 4th house things, or 8th house things, 9th house things. But since we're focusing on the blueprint for Leo, the most ideal blueprint for Leo, we need to think about where is Mars exalted and where is Mars debilitated. So Mars is exalted in the 6th house for a Leo ascendant. Mars is debilitated in the 12th house for a Leo ascendant. When we think about houses like 6th, 8th, or 12th, we often find, or have heard people say, that the 6th house represents one's enemies, our competitors. The 8th house often represents battles, things that we have to go through and deal with, where change occurs. And the 12th house often represents the results of those battles, the results of the enemies and the battles that we have with those enemies. The 12th house is also a house of loss and a house of retreat. But what we see with a Leo ascendant is that we have Mars, the ruler of the 9th and the 4th, exalted in the 6th, which is a house of hard work and improvement and taking on one's competitors and one's enemies and being victorious against them. In our previous video, when we discussed how Venus functions for a Leo ascendant, I mentioned how the 10th lord for a Leo ascendant, which is Venus, is exalted in the 8th house. And a person's activity, often ruled over by 8th house, or what they're going to be known for, the kind of karmas that come forth, the 8th house being a house of sudden breaks and changes, the battle. When we kind of synthesize these two planets, Venus and Mars, what we see is that Venus is exalted in the 8th house. The 10th lord for a Leo ascendant is exalted in the 8th house. That means that the person's path in life and direction in life and activity in life, essentially what they're going to be known for a Leo ascendant, is often dealing with sudden breaks and changes, battles. We have the 9th lord, which is the planet that deals with the sense of purpose, divine path, is in the 6th house. And the 6th house, while it does deal with enemies and competitors, it's also a house that deals with the day-to-day routines. And we know that we have this idea of Leo as being royalty. We often refer to Leo as the king, reference the idea of the lion being the symbol for Leo. And we can make all of this glamour about what it means to be in charge and what it means to be royalty. But the ideal king is the servant king, the king who is working to improve to benefit the common people, the people that is in their care, in their kingdom, 6th house things. The king is there to help prevent problems, think about things, how to improve the culture. Having the 9th lord exalted in the 6th. Again, the 6th is that idea of overcoming obstacles, but also of improvement. It's an upachaya house. So it's taking the 9th Lord rulership and putting it in the 6th. The dharma, the purpose, how do we improve that? How do we defend that? How do we protect that? These are all 6th house things, combinations of 9th Lord in the 6th. And Mars itself is a kshatriya, or a warrior caste. And by warrior caste, again, the idea is to defend dharma and support a culture and a society. So what we see with this Mars ruling the 9th and the 4th is that a Leo is really at home, 4th house things, when a Leo is of service, when a Leo is seeking to improve the people that are in their care, because you can be the king or queen of a family, or your city, or your township, or state, or country. And this is often why Leos do become politicians or public figures or public speakers. Too often we think it's because, again, that the sun wants to shine. But remember, as we think about these blueprints of each ascendant, that the ascendants, what we think about the ascendants aren't just because it's Leo. It's based upon how all the other planets from Leo are arranged from Leo. So a Leo is meant to be in charge, not to shine, although sometimes that happens when it becomes a little bit perverted. Although, of course, you can have heroic Leos and they do valorous things. But the point of Leo is to defend a sense of purpose, to defend a culture, to defend a dharma, to improve society, to take care of those people that can't take care of themselves. Because in truth, a king, we often think of the idea of monarchy as being a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that it's difficult to run a state well as a monarchy because it's difficult to find a king or nobility which truly is self-sacrificial and truly does have the people at heart. If you can find a king or a queen or a noble person who is able to do this, why does that make sense? Because just look around. Get on Facebook. Watch all the dumb things that people say, all the crazy ideas that they have, all the conspiracy theories that they throw out, how they think that they understand why this political party isn't doing better than this other political party. These people who are not even involved in politics, who are not in the day-to-day, who have absolutely no training in how to run a country or a government, spouting out what they think would be good if only they were in charge. And it would be wonderful if we could put them in charge for a day, but then also hit the reset button afterwards. Because what most people, I think, will find once they get involved in politics or leadership is that there is so much more to it than we can than us little peons, and we're all little peons, can possibly conceive. Which is one of the reasons why personally I try to stay out of politics, even thinking about politics, because it's easy to come up with an idea and opinion when you're not actually in it, when you're not actually trying to navigate all the ins and outs, all the sacrifices that have to be made, because you can't please everybody. There's this thought that if we just had the right government, we could please everybody, when it's not going to be the case. Sometimes certain individuals have to make sacrifices, whether it's the wealthy, whether it's the poor, whether it's the middle class. Again, we're not going to get into that because we can go on and on about that, and I'm sure we can debate endlessly and uselessly about that. But again, the idea of a monarchy, the idea of having a ruler, an enlightened ruler, or at least a ruler who has a humanitarian heart and some wisdom and can weigh out, is this a worthwhile sacrifice for my people or not? That's what we're aiming for, and that's the goal of Leo, and we can see that by having the 4th Lord and the 9th Lord exalted in the 6th for a Leo ascendant. Now, Mars is debilitated in the 12th house, which is a house of expenses. It's oftentimes where we have excessiveness. Taking Mars, a planet of war and force and willpower, and using it in a place where, and using it in excess. And that's what happens when you have a planet in the 12th. And we can think of it like, but it's not exalted, so therefore it doesn't have a lot of power. But you can still have a lot of excess and debilitate yourself. And that's typically what happens to people. They become debilitated through using something too much in the wrong way. And having that Mars, the planet of war, the planet of protection, the planet of soldiering, the planet of using one's will to any kind of excess, will damage the whole kingdom, will ruin the whole kingdom. Eventually it will all fall apart. So we can see this reflected by having this idea of Mars being debilitated in the 12th house for a Leo ascendant. Also, a Leo ascendant is meant to be in the world, active in the world, serving in the world. He's meant to go down to the soup kitchen and serve the homeless people. He's not meant to sit back and try to throw money at problems. Again, the 12th house is expenses. We throw money at things. Expenses are throwing money at things. So the true king, the true nobility, the true queen is meant to get their hands dirty, 6th house things, not retreat on vacation, 12th house things, not to try to get away from the world by joining a church or a monastic environment, not by trying to throw money at things, 12th house things, expenses. So the Leo is meant to not use their Martian will, not try to waste their dharma and their activity, 4th house rulership of that Mars, in 12th house matters. They're meant to channel it towards 6th house things, such as service, such as activity, such as improving the common good for everyone. And Mars is one of those planets which very much shows that we can use our will in a surrendered fashion, and that's the goal of a Leo ascendant, to do it in a surrendered fashion. As they say in the Bhagavad Gita, you're entitled to action only, but not the fruits of your action. The king does his best to contemplate what is best for everyone, and then uses the willpower to implement it, sees what happens, and then improves. If there's a mistake, tries again. And this is because Capricorn rules over the 6th house for a Leo ascendant, which is that idea of trying, of getting up, taking a stand. If it works, fantastic, then Mars can build upon that. If it doesn't and you get defeated, Mars can still beat upon that. Mars is never defeated. There's the cliche that you're only defeated when you give up. That is very much appropriate for Mars related to a Leo ascendant. But the trick is to always remember it has to be for the common good, not to be overly willful, but for the common good of all. Mars is about engineering, logic, improving things, not about forcing something into a hole where it doesn't fit. That's a wrong use of Mars. So when we contemplate Mars for a Leo ascendant, this can give greater insight into how the Leo personality ideally is meant to function. And if we can contemplate this for ourselves, if we are a Leo ascendant, no matter where our Mars is, it will help us figure out how to more effectively align or resonate with that ideal blueprint of our path as a Leo ascendant.